all of these assumptions that we make that are stopping us from taking that step, that are stopping us from doing that solo show, that are stopping us from sending that message, that are stopping us from making that bold move, it's all based on assumptions about other people. And we're letting that dictate our actions rather than looking at ourselves and saying, that's something that I aspire to. Hi, Ben.
Hi, Carl.
My beard is gone.
My
And you got
beard
very
has
upset.
flourished.
It is. We have switched places, and now you have the longer beard.
Yeah, this is temporary. But by the next time we meet, my beard will probably be shorter than yours.
Yeah, mine grows so fast. It's crazy.
Yeah,
But enough about
I'm due for a
beards.
trim. Yeah.
But yeah, enough about beards. There's our pre-show banter. Okay, I want to dive in. You had some really cool ideas about topics for today, and I had some cool ideas for topics today, and we're probably going to end up recording a couple shorter episodes today. That's our thought anyway, unless we end up going like down a rabbit hole in this first topic. But this is one that you presented, and oh no, this is one that I presented.
This is one that you presented, yeah. But I presented something that was potentially the other side of that coin. So
well, you know what? I'm gonna throw you for a loop. We agreed before we hit record what the topic we were going to talk about. I'm going to change it up on you, and
okay.
And I'm gonna use one that you suggested because you seemed really like excited about it, and it seemed to be really on top of your mind. So I want to catch you off guard and go into it. No, but it was you were telling me about a conversation you had with a client.
Yes,
and the conversation was about how they, if I remember correctly, they were asking like, yeah, should I do like a solo show? And you were basically like, yeah, like why not? And the idea that the artist felt like they needed some sort of permission or like validation before trying something that they haven't done before. And I want to hear, well, first of all, I want to hear your thoughts about, that experience and that story and kind of like what was going through their heads, but then like what was going through your head in that. Then we could talk about some other examples of when that's happened to us, because it happens so often with artists or even, our friends and peers.
Yeah. Well, what made this conversation interesting is that this is an artist who she doesn't want to be a professional artist, but she does like making her art, and she, it's important for her, and her art is nice. And we've made a bunch of songs together already. And she was telling me that she wants to just like go, it's like a life goal, just get up on stage and perform her songs. Like, even though she doesn't see herself ever becoming a professional singer-songwriter, she is like pursuing, being a therapist or getting a degree in social work. So it's like, that's like her future. But she felt, I think she was feeling like this is like too self-indulgent to just try to make a concert of my own music. Like who am I to do this? Who's going to want to come see this? Even, especially if it's just like one time, just to just do this for myself as like a thing. And I was like, it doesn't like, and my response to this was like, first of all, like, you should for sure do this because this is something you want to do and it's like on your list. You know what I mean? Like, go for it. And like, you don't need anybody's permission. And if people don't want to come, they won't come. And if you make one, like I was telling her that I did a show, I was playing bass with a good friend of mine who put on like his first concert of his own original music. And he didn't have any goals other than just like sharing his music, at least for starters. And, maybe who knows what was going to come after that. But just to do that first show was valid. And it's like a chance to express yourself. And even if it's just friends and family that show up, that's still something that if they show up, they want to show up for you. So there's like no harm done. You don't need permission from anyone. You can, even if it's a flop, sometimes you got to take those risks and do those life goals that you want to do, and it's totally okay. And you can do it. Like I was kind of like telling her. Yeah.
And I would even argue that like, what would be considered a flop in that sense, because like if
right.
she doesn't get picked up by a,
exactly,
a label, like okay. That was never the
Yeah.
goal. You know, if she doesn't sell, you know, a whole bunch of tickets for it or whatever, like, and it let's even if she like, you know, there's a technical difficulties and she starts her set a half hour late, but like, it's all her friends there. Like, it's very unlikely that just like random people are going to show up. You
Yeah.
know, especially if she does it like, you know, more of a house show sort of situation. You know, something that's lower pressure. Like, there is no flop. The only flop is if she doesn't do it.
Yeah, she has nothing to lose really, and like,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, obviously she's talented enough to get on stage and sing her songs, even if she's not like a great musician, she could play it well enough on guitar. You know, she could play guitar well enough to accompany herself, and she like wants to bring people up for a little bit, other people, but it, you're definitely like good enough to do that, and people are not going to like walk out and like say, oh, how you know. Like, I think she was like I think more it was more less about like what other people thought about the performance and more about what other people thought about like her doing something that she maybe felt was like selfish. To like do something to like promote yourself to just because, and she didn't feel like there was
Yeah.
that was valid. And I was saying like, no, just like we do all kinds of stuff for ourselves so that we feel valid, and that's like, I don't know, different people have different, like, I don't know, it's not my thing, but people go shopping just to feel like, a person, you know what I mean? Like there's all kinds of ways that people do, you know what I mean? It's like that, and that's still valid. Even if you think it's self-indulgent, it's still valid. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. And I would make the argument too that like, yes, we live in a society where people are judgmental, like especially online anyway, right?
m-
Or at least
yeah,
they're more vocal
mostly
about it
online,
online.
mostly
Yeah,
online.
they're it's more noticeable online. But
It's more
I
polarized online. That's for sure.
yes, yes. And I think for those artists that are, you know, they're worried about, are people going to think that it's self-indulgent that I'm doing a show? I feel like there are probably a lot of people, a lot of creatives especially, that have that sort of feeling, this like fear of not their music being judged, but like their actions and their motivations being judged. When in reality, I feel like it's such a not gonna happen thing, you know? Like, I don't know, like, I feel like if somebody does judge her or think that like, oh, she's being self-indulgent for doing this show, like, that's a them thing, you know what I mean? Like, because
Yeah.
it's you know, unless it is something where, I don't know, I'm trying to imagine like a sitcom or a cartoon where this would happen, then it would be so over the top and it would be like, oh, renting out billboards and skywriters and like what, you
Yeah.
know, like something crazy and ridiculous and over the top. Like, okay,
That's like that. It's like
I can
that
see that,
movie,
but
The Room. It's like that. You know what I'm talking about?
yeah, like I,
They
I've,
had
I've
that.
actually never seen it,
Yeah.
but I know what you're talking about. I've
Yeah.
heard enough about it to know exactly what you mean. But I think,
Yeah.
but I think we expect, if we take a little chance, if we get a little bit outside of our comfort zone, we think that people are going to react as if we were doing some ridiculous, you know, over the top showboaty thing. You know, I would say if we're going to tie this into other, you know, other studio pros, like other
Hmm.
engineers or producers, I feel like that's why so many people are so hesitant to get on social media and hesitant to like promote their business and like talk about the work that they're doing and talk about the projects they're working on, because they feel like the second that they go on social media, everyone's going to think that they're cringy. And
Right.
it's like, you're only going to be cringy if you do cringy shit. That's kind of the way that I look at it. And like, she would only, you know, people would only judge her if for people are only going to judge her for being like self-indulgent if she actually does it self-indulgently. I think that's a word.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
she'd have to jump through a lot of hoops to make it like
Yeah.
that. You know what I mean? And yeah. And I think it's a really good point of like, if you want to do something impactful, whether it's for yourself or for other people, you kind of sometimes have to take a risk and get out of a comfort zone, or could be something like just fear of what other people think about you, and be okay with. And I'm not saying I'm great at this because I am afraid of what other people think of me, but I've gotten better at it. But you know what? It depends on which arena. There are some arenas where I just don't give an F, and there are arenas where I do. But if you want to be impactful, sometimes you have to just like do your thing no matter what, and not care what other people think. And I think a lot like people like I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know how to. Is it, well, I was talking to one of the guys that's making this mindfulness app I've been working on, and he was saying now that it's live, people are taking it seriously. All these people, all these contributors that were like wishy washy with him, are saying, "Oh, you know what? Oh, it's live." All of a sudden, they want to like be a part of it, and now that they see that like he's done the actual work, they're not like judgmental of like this maybe thing. They're like, "Oh, let's do like, oh wow!" Like they feel um I don't want to say envious, but they go from being skeptical and maybe making fun of it a little bit in their heads to being, oh, I want to be a part of this now, you know? And I found like, you know, at the beginning of, there were times in my journey where once I did something and I didn't think too much about it, but if I think a lot of people are afraid of doing things. So for me, when I actually started this wedding band back in the day, people were skeptical until we had weddings booked. And then once we had weddings booked, people were like jealous that we had actually done a thing and made a thing happen. You know what I mean? Like, and
Mhm.
I think people were judgmental of me when they said I wanted to get into, you know, music production. And like once I had a studio, I was like, oh, okay. You know, and
Yeah.
then people take you seriously and they go from like being like, oh, who is this guy to all of a sudden you're like a magnet, you know, to like, and so when you actually execute on the thing that you think is crazy, it does the opposite effect. Instead of you like being concerned that other people are judging you, and maybe they are judging you, but you actually execute on it, people are like, okay, you know, hats off, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Like with the artist you're talking about, like the people that she thought would be judgmental are probably going to be like really excited and supportive and like think that she's so brave for doing this because it's not like it isn't a career choice. This is something that she's doing just for the sake of wanting to share her art. And like that is a very brave thing to do. Like and it's like I feel like for us and you know the listeners, like sharing our creative works is like so second nature to us that it's a little it's sometimes hard to take a step back and realize that for like you know normal people I don't know what else to call them. Like for most of the world, like that is a terrifying concept, you know, and I think it's yeah, like once she actually does the performance, I feel like people will see how I think they're I don't think they're ever gonna see it how she thinks they're gonna see it.
Right.
They're gonna either not know about it at all because she doesn't say anything about it, or she, you know, that she
They're going to be
they
impressed that
they're
yeah,
gonna be
like,
impressed and
yeah,
and inspired probably too.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think you know back to the idea of like the magnet, like once something clicks, people start kind of coming back to you. I feel like we hear that sort of tale as old as time with artists and with like people that win the lottery. You know what I mean? It's kind of like as soon as somebody wins the lottery, all of like the fourth cousins come out of the woodwork. You know,
yeah.
or like when an artist like blows up, like all the friends from high school that were like, you know, always like shit talking them suddenly are like
Yeah,
trying to post as many old photos together. Like, oh yeah, I've known them since way back when, you know, and then they get pissy when you know, the artist wants nothing to do with them because they had nothing to do with them before, you know, and it's this weird mindset where like, yeah, like they're gonna, you know, beat you down until you're successful, and then they're gonna act as if they were, you know, supporting you the whole time. Now that's a bit like more jaded, I think, than the artist, the situation that your artist is in. And maybe it's just like not as big of a scale, obviously, because I feel like she's not expecting this one solo show to get her on the Super Bowl halftime or anything.
yeah.
But I think it's something that you know we all experience in different ways, whether it's you know sharing our creative art or you know starting a business or you know asking somebody out on a date. You know, like It happens all the time. And I think as soon as we can start to try to rationalize with ourselves that, worst case scenario, the other person's going to forget about this in like a week.
Best case scenario,
This
you have
really,
like a peak life moment,
yeah,
and
something you'll remember forever. Yeah.
yeah, and I think also a big takeaway is like just doing that scary thing, like working hard to do something and to finish it is always better than to just be scared and not try, And so
Hmm.
whether you're an artist thinking about performing or making that song or trying to make a business, and even if you fail, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. There's like a fear of failure that I think is like the fear of like things that could go wrong in a relationship, preventing you from moving forward in a relationship. I think is something that stops a lot of people from forming deeper, romantic relationships. But if you don't try, you'll never know, and it might flop. Of course, it might flop. Like any relationship could flop, but if you don't try, then you'll never know. And
Yeah.
you know, if you're too afraid of like the consequences, then you're also missing out on the positives.
Yeah.
Of taking leaps and committing to things and like finishing things.
Yeah. And I would say, I'm trying to like tie this in for the producers and engineers
Yeah, I
listening,
know.
like how this also
It's a
applies to
little
them. No,
esoteric,
no, no,
right?
no. I love the balance you're finding, but I think that's kind of a thing that we all go through, not just when we first decide to say, you know what, I think I'm going to start charging for this. There's that huge sense of like, oh, is somebody going to think, what are they going to think when I start asking people for money to record them or to mix them or whatever? And like, so feel like we've all had that sense of just like that intimidation of saying a price for the first time. But then I would argue that kind of keeps it rears its ugly head throughout your career as well. And even when you get to a point where you're like, okay, well, I've been charging, pulling a number out of my butt. Like I've been charging, $400 a mix, and I, inflation is going up, and things are harder, and like I really should be charging more than this, but like I'm terrified to just say 500. I'm terrified to say 600, whatever the number is, and it's like that feeling of, well, what are they gonna? Am I gonna scare them away? What are they gonna think of me? Are they gonna think that I'm like too big for my britches? Like all of these things, and then we talk ourselves out of ever taking that step until next thing you know, you've been professionally you've been professionally doing it for like 10 years and still charging $250 for a mix. And it's not because your skills haven't gotten any better. It's just because you haven't taken the leap of doing what you're, it's gonna sound way floofy, but like doing what your heart knows it really should be doing,
Mm,
which is, seeing yourself as having more value than
yeah.
you've been allowing yourself to see, and talking yourself down, thinking that people are going to judge you because you're raising your rates, or because you're charging now instead of, doing it for free. So I think it's something that is not just for non creatives, and it's not just for people that are doing something new for the first time. I think this kind of comes back in cycles and hits us in different ways.
Hmm. It's like going back to this, like the fear of commitment, the fear of like doing the wrong thing almost, and just
Yeah.
like making a move and knowing that if you stick to your guns, the worst case scenario is it's a flop, but the best case scenario is like you're in a better place for it.
Yeah. And usually, like, the potential upside far exceeds the potential
Exactly.
downside.
Exactly.
It's a
Yeah.
calculated risk.
Yeah. Another takeaway from like mixing engineers, maybe, and it could also be for producers, honestly, is just like making bold choices with whether it's the mix or the production and not just playing safe, just because you feel like they'll approve a safe thing always. There is what to be said about like what you usually do and what people expect, but sometimes a mix needs something bold or a production needs something that you've never really done before, but you feel like you can do something new and exciting and different. Um, and and make the move. And worst case scenario, you can revert back to what you might usually do. Best case scenario is you've opened a new pathway of creativity and like, new directions. And that's always fun and inspiring. So don't, you have permission to do the bold things sometimes, and you can always, hopefully it'll go well, but you could always walk it back if it's not working.
Yeah, there's very few things that are like unfixable, even with our careers. Like not even just like in the micro of like a mixed decision or a production decision, but like even with our careers, there's like very few things that are. There are very few and very few like well-intended things. I'll say that. Like obviously, yeah, you could like really, if you're like a total asshole, like yeah, you can mess some things up. But I guess I'm saying, with things that we aspire to do, things that we have, a dream of doing, there's very, very, very rarely like a worst case scenario that's actually that bad. I say this all the time for when people are doing outreach, right? When they're doing cold outreach, when
Mm.
there's a band they really want to work with, they want to like, they love to just like get to know this band or artist, and if it makes sense to work together, that would be amazing. But like I hear this all the time where they just like don't. They tell themselves that the artist isn't gonna care. They tell themselves that they're not gonna respond to the message. They're gonna tell themselves that they already have somebody else doing it and a great job, and why would they want to work with me? All these things. You're gonna tell themselves all of these different reasons why the artist is gonna say no, and literally every single one of them is an assumption. Like they're assuming all of these things. They're assuming that the artist is not gonna answer. They're assuming that the artist is even happy with the project that you were listening to. Like you're assuming that they had a great time with that producer or a great time with that engineer. You're assuming that the budget, for working with a really, really top name engineer is going to always be there. Maybe it's not. You're also assuming that they want to go in that same direction. You're assuming that they do it all themselves. You're assuming that they have their team. Like whatever those assumptions are, like you're never going to know the actual answer until you talk to them. And I always say that the worst case scenario when you reach out to somebody, and this could be with um reaching out to artists, or I mean I've never been on dating apps, so there obviously going to be some nuances that I probably don't I don't understand. But I feel like in general, it's like if we send a message to somebody, if we send it thoughtfully with intention, and it's like personalized and it's genuine and it's authentically us, the worst case scenario is that they're not going to actually even see it. That's the worst case scenario. Other scenarios could be that they see it and then they just don't respond. And you don't know if it's because they hate you or because they just forgot to respond, or they saw it and thought, "Oh, I'm going to respond to this later," and they did it. And then you can always follow up another time. But maybe they could respond and say, "Hey, oh no, I really appreciate, let's like that. Thanks so much for all of that. We already have somebody that we're working with, so like, not interested, but like keep in mind for the future or whatever." Okay, so basically it goes nowhere, but okay, not the worst thing. And I would say a good response would be if they're offended and really mean to you.
Hmm.
And I say that would be a good response because you're seeing what they're like as people right away, and you are realizing, oh, this is a bullet that I am dodging right now. Right.
Right.
So like even the like
The
offended, like
scariest.
how
Yeah, the
how
scariest
dare
reaction.
you
Yeah.
scariest reaction is
Yeah.
actually probably the single most informative.
Right.
So like I said, like the worst case scenario is that they don't see it at all, or maybe they see it and they just don't respond and then they forget about you. That's the worst case scenario. And the example that I always use, and I'll put you on the spot, Ben. So, do you remember the face of the grocery store clerk that checked you out last time you went to the grocery store?
Kind of, but not very
But
much.
not
You know what I
really.
mean? Like,
Do you remember their name?
no, no,
I
they
mean,
don't wear
they
name
were
tags here.
okay. Okay. So, but you
But I
don't,
know what you're
you
saying.
kind of remember the face, yeah. Um, does that mean that you think that they're like some sort of like lesser person?
No.
Does that mean that you like hate them? That you're gonna remember this horrible interaction
It
forever?
was just a moment in my life, in my day, in my life that just
Yeah,
happened, you know?
it just wasn't
It
like
was a brief
emotionally.
interaction.
It was a brief interaction, and it just wasn't emotionally significant enough to you know to lodge into your memory. Now, maybe if you go to the same grocery store
That's kind of the
every
problem here,
week,
but yeah.
yeah. So like, or maybe like gas station or something. I mean, like something you
Yeah,
go to less frequently, but
like
but
one
once you start
time.
going there regularly, you'll probably still like recognize the people at the grocery store or at Target or whatever, So, and it's again, it's not because you have anything against them and that you were rude for even talking to them. It's just they just didn't they just didn't lodge in their memory, right? So like there's all of these assumptions that we make that are stopping us from taking that step, that are stopping us from doing that solo show, that are stopping us from sending that message, that are stopping us from making that bold move. It's all based on assumptions about other people. And we're letting that dictate our actions rather than looking at ourselves and saying, I really want to like that's something that I aspire to. I
Yeah,
want to do that. I'm gonna give it a shot. If it doesn't work out, that's okay. It's
right.
like my life, my self-worth, my career, my my whole person is not gonna be dictated by the result of this thing that I do.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
and like it's the opposite. If you think people are judging you, if you do it, they're going to be drawn to you, like we were talking about earlier. There's that back, and people are going to be jealous that you actually put in the work and you actually did the thing that was scary.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it. You're afraid that
Yeah.
what they're thinking, and they're not thinking. But if you do it, it's the other way around, right? Then
Yeah.
they are thinking, and they're impressed and jealous, and they want to do that. And and you've so it's like so many people like the world is yours to be, to do your thing. You don't need permission. And if you actually are one of the few people that take chances, good things will come from it.
Yeah.
All right,
And as
cool.
and as far as that, I was gonna say I wanted to add one thing to the jealousy comment would be like I would rather have other people be jealous of the work that I put in than me be jealous of the results that somebody else got.
Yeah. And it's one of those like laws of the universe that's just the way it works,
Yeah.
Can't.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Carl, this is fun. I
Yeah.
think we did this. We could put a ribbon on this
We
episode.
did this.
What do you think?
I think we did this, Ben. Yes, that was
And because we
legally
did
an
this scary
episode.
episode, other people are jealous of
It
us.
it wasn't scary, Ben.
It wasn't. It's always fun
It
with you,
wasn't.
Carl.
Yeah.
It's
I
it's
know.
never scary
I
with
love
you.
it.
It's just like friends chatting. So
Ah! Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway.
And now the signal is clipped.
Sorry. So yeah, no, great. This was awesome. And thanks for letting me throw that. Thanks for letting me call the audible there and change the topic on you without telling you.
Yeah, that was so scary. A little bit
I
scary.
I wasn't thinking about it at the time, but I was feeling like that was the right move. That was a thing to talk about first today,
All right.
and I just went with it. And you know what? It did blow up in my face.
And we went with it, and that was good.
We went with it, and it was great. And
Yeah.
you're great.
And you're great, Carl.
And
Here's
I will
looking
see you.
at your beard.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I will see you next time, Ben.
I'll see you in a little bit.
Okay, bye, Ben.
Bye, Carl.